Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
We'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast. I am Sterling Holmes, joined as always on Tuesdays by Joshua Brisco. You can follow him on the X at JB Brisco, myself at Homestretch KC. It has been a long time off for both of us. I feel like I haven't talked to everyone. It's been like a week. Like a week and a half since the Chiefs clinched the 1 seed. And then Brisco has been gone for 2 weeks because he's been basking in the gloriousness of the sun down in Mexico.
Just 1 week, by the way. I was absent for last Tuesday's show, and yes, we were on a little island off the coast of Cancun, and I would recommend that if given the opportunity.
What's it like being in the 1%? Is it nice? Is it hard?
Renee found a Black Friday deal for this resort she'd been looking at and then stacked like 3 total deals in the promo codes and everything. So that's how we were able to pull that off. And it was nice. Short notice, quick turnaround, but very nice.
I want to have a little fun with you today because I think there's a really interesting concept going around. We saw the Detroit Lions last night, even kind of the rest versus rust. Right, because they had a chance to rest a lot of players last night. Dan Campbell said it was going to be unfair to the backups, which I'm sitting here going, so they don't practice at all? Like, I feel like most backups practice, or when you put Hendon Hooker and a lot of the backups in the fourth quarters and you've been blowing teams out, I'm sure they weren't prepared to come in then, but yet they still did. But Dan Campbell decided to treat last game like it was any other regular season game, right? The Chiefs are not planning on doing that come week 18. All reports sounds like Patrick sitting, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, the main guys shall be sitting. And my question, which I want to have a nice back and forth with you with, is that the smart decision? Or do you treat this game like a preseason game? And not a preseason game where no one plays, but where you have the starters play maybe a half, maybe a quarter, maybe even just a couple drives. We know rest is paramount. I'm with you there. And I'm not even saying play Travis or Chris, but maybe some of the guys like Hollywood Brown, maybe some of the other veteran players who could still use a couple of in-game reps. So we'll get into the rest versus rust. I don't know your thoughts though, Brisco, because I'm typically sitting here going 23 days off from playing games. That is a long time. I know practice, you can get a lot done. But practice now is not like the NFL 15 years ago where there are a lot of padded practices. You don't get that same game action. All of a sudden, intensity ramps up come playoff time. You're playing a pretty darn good team, and you haven't played real football in 23 days.
This is actually the rare instance in which I know my opinion incredibly strongly, where I think this is a relatively open and shut case. I think the argument against it is a little paranoid, but ultimately totally unnecessary. I don't think the rust should be a concern in the minds of fans at all, for a number of reasons. One is that the idea of there being like rusty teams is a little bit of kind of like a conventional wisdom that I don't know is actually particular wisdom, because I think it's something that we go, you'd have enough time off, maybe you come back a little rusty. Hey, rest and rust are one vowel different. This is something we should talk about. And so I think the evidence is spotty at best. I think the specific upside downside is a total blowout. The upside of getting all this rest is that you have these veteran players coming back rejuvenated, taking on a team like maybe it's one of the top seeds. I guess if it could be Baltimore, it couldn't be Buffalo in the divisional round. But if it's the Texans or the Steelers or the Broncos or the Chargers, or even Baltimore, these teams that have had to play, had to strain through the finish, if you will, at the end of this season, season, they're going to be physically banged up. You're going to be fresh off of essentially 3 weeks between meaningful football games. The downside is that maybe that first drive, it's a little bit of getting reacclimated to the temperature of your water. I'm okay with that. Patrick Mahomes, by and large, throughout I think the majority of playoff games, he comes out and he sails a pass in the first 15. It just happens. He just gets excited. He gets the zoomies a little bit. He's got a big arm, and especially a little earlier in his career, sometimes he'll just sail a pass. You go, oh man, they're really amped, and then they settle in and things are fine. That happens under all circumstances. The downside is you lose a mental week off, depending on how the starters are prepping for the Broncos. You certainly lose the benefit of just not having to suit up at all on Sunday. And what if Trent McDuffie goes out there and plays 2 series, and at some point a wide receiver with something to play for rolls up on him in a funny way, and now you're talking about starting Najee Johnson and Joshua Williams and Chris Roland Wallace essentially all in the playoffs. The downside is so down, and the upside is so up. And that's without getting to what I think is my strongest argument. If who's the best first year sort of contender right now? We thought maybe the Texans last year were kind of setting up in that. They've fallen off this year a little bit. The Steelers have Russell Wilson. I don't know if there is a good example, at least on the AFC side. But let's say it's the Broncos, Bo Nix and Sean Payton and all that, okay? If you said, hey, I think Bo Nix might want to stay in the rhythm of all of this, I would, instead of having 2 weeks off, I'd hear you out. I don't think I'd side with him playing, but I'd hear you out. I wouldn't have played if I was Dan Campbell. But aside from that, you're talking about the team who has played a season of postseason football in recent years. In the midst of this three-peat, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Trent McDuffie and certainly Chris Jones, the entire offensive line. Creed will get a snap to keep the start streak going. And then if DJ Humphries is available, I'd be open to seeing him play. I don't need to see anything else from anyone else on this team. They've been here before. They've gone through these processes. For the Chiefs, their rusty stretch came after the Bills game. They were rusty playing tight games against inferior opponents. What they need now is rejuvenation, and they're going to get that with and only with rest. So I think this is an absolute dream for the Chiefs. And it bums me out a little bit that so many people have kind of taken the cynical side of it, because I just don't even think it's close.
Well, you know me, I'm Captain Cynical over here.
True.
No, again, I am team rest versus rust being the major factor, especially with the majority of players. But I do think it's an interesting concept. It's the NFL. It's such a smaller sample size than baseball. Right, I think baseball, it is a bigger factor in the rust, because if you're a hitter, not for the pitchers as much, but for a hitter, right? All of a sudden, you're not seeing 97 for 2 weeks. That's a big difference. You can't adjust to that. That's a big difference. Football is a little bit different in that regard. And I think Jeremy brings up a good point. You can't rest every starter. There aren't 90-plus players on the team like in the preseason. You have 53, right?
And 16. You have 69 with the practice squad.
With the practice squad.
I think there's a limit of elevations you could do, but we're going to see a lot of guys get elevated, and rightfully so, I think.
And so there are a couple names I want to go back and forth with you to see, hey, should they or should they not play? We can all agree Patrick, Travis, and Chris Jones, those three will set aside. That is a guaranteed. We don't want to see them play. Right. Even if your team rust might be a factor, I think those three guys specifically are still saying, especially with Chris Jones and the injury and the calf strain, that's team. You sit, you rest, you get healthy. We do not have any worries about you come playoff time. Before we do that, Underdog, baby. Oh, yeah. Underdog. As someone who I thought my fantasy football team was ass, I somehow ended up winning my fantasy football league. No idea how. Yeah, that was wild. But guess what I was doing during the regular season when I thought I had no chance? I was playing Underdog as well, because they do fantasy football drafts, so much fun, as well as playing champions. And what I really enjoy about Underdog, let's say you have 4 higher or lowers, right? 4 higher lowers. Let's say you only get 3 right.
Well, you lost.
No. Not on Underdog, baby. Not on Underdog. It depends. If you want to go all in with your 4, you can. But the smart player might be, hey, I don't know how much I feel about it. I want to still get something if I get 75% right. Underdog has you injury protection, vulture protection. Underdog has it all. I am a huge fan of playing Underdog. Played it last night as well. A lot of fun in a high-scoring game when it was the Niners and the Detroit Lions. I took an under, though, on a lot of the Detroit Lions players. I thought Craig Reynolds was going to get a good amount of run. Didn't happen. Dan Campbell doesn't care about rest. He apparently thought rust was the bigger factor. But if you want to play Underdog, which I highly recommend, make sure you download the app today and use code Arrowhead Addict, one word, to get to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, code Arrowhead Addict, all one word, to get to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Higher or lower, you make the call on Underdog. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado, 47 games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Voting in Colorado. Concern with your play. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call it 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right.
I'll give you an 8.88 on that one, I think. If you can get your first big breath after terms apply instead of before terms apply, I think you could really nail this.
Yeah, that was about a 6.9. I was not proud of myself on that one. That was wasn't super quick. Again, I keep drinking cappuccinos during this, and I need water.
Got milk in there. It's too flimmy. Yeah,
you need some black coffee, which is my typical go-to.
Yes.
But
black coffee is going to get that disclaimer out so quick.
Guaranteed. All right. So CJ95, TK, Patrick, they're not playing. But guys like DJ Humphries, guys like Hollywood Brown, guys like, I don't want to say Trey Smith. I'm probably sitting Trey and Creed.
I've got 3 names that I'm bullish on, but I think my list might be 3.
For example, I think DJ Humphries, if he's healthy enough to go, needs to play. If DJ Humphries is not playing this game, I don't want to see him starting at left tackle in a playoff game. Are we in agreement there?
Most likely. I was talking to Ryan Tracy yesterday, who also does great work, and he's the first person, and he knows ball, and he knows the physical side of it all. I trust Ryan, and he doesn't want DJ Humphries to play on Sunday, and he thinks, hey, just practice, continue to work back. It's a soft tissue injury. Don't want to see you aggravate it. So I'm shouting him out because I am on your side there with Humphries, where I'd like to see him play, at least say, hey, go play a half. And let's get out of there looking good and feeling good, not leaving at halftime because you've got a tweak. I think this is a little bit of a different conversation. I think there's a really good chance he starts at left tackle in the playoffs. I would like to see him start at left tackle in this game. But I thought it was interesting that Ryan, who I respect deeply, was not as worried about it. But I would say yes, DJ Humphries is one of the 3 guys I'm thinking of.
Okay, because I think Joe Thuney has done such a good job at left tackle, by far exceeding all my expectations of what he could do at left tackle, and almost changing how I think we view body types at left tackle, right? Joe Thuney is obviously a different cat. He's not a normal left tackle body size-wise, but he's getting it done in ways that maybe we didn't expect. And I wonder how that changes draft processes when it comes to, well, this guy has shorter arms. There's no chance he can be a left tackle in the NFL. He's a guard. Well, Joe Thuney's doing it, and doing it at a pretty darn high level right now. I am not saying he's the best left tackle in football by any means, but he's playing at a top 10 LT level right now. I think we can maybe agree there, 10 to 12. He's doing better than Orlando Brown Jr. ever did in Kansas City.
Pro Football Focus would disagree with you pretty adamantly, and I know we used them off and on for tackle conversations this year. And Seth Kaiser did a film review of him and Caliendo after the Texans game, and then he said that nothing really changed in the Steelers game for him, that he is getting a little more help. He has some really, really good reps. I think that Joe Thuney has probably had like the 3 of the 5 best reps at left tackle for the Chiefs this season, and he's had pretty much none of the 10 lowest. So like that is incredibly valuable. I also still think that the Humphries-Thuney duo is probably their highest ceiling. It's really important, though, that I do believe the Chiefs can win a Super Bowl with Joe Thuney playing left tackle. I don't think it's plan A, B, or C. I think they're probably on plan D there now, but I think they can win a Super Bowl with him at left tackle. I don't know that I could say that about Kingsley for sure, and probably not about Wanya Morris. Maybe.
All right, so here's what I want to see. Let's go offensive line first. Okay, offensive line on who we want to see.
Love it.
Week 18. This sounds kind of fun.
Fantasy lineup, basically.
Yeah, fantasy lineup.
Fantastic.
So if I had my druthers, I want DJ Humphries at left tackle.
Yep.
I want to see it.
Yep.
Left guard, I still say play Caliendo.
I agree.
Keep getting him more reps if he is going to have the left guard start in the playoffs.
Yep.
Center, Hunter Norzad.
Yep.
Right guard.
Creed will get the start to keep a start streak going, but we'd like to see Norzad play the majority of the game.
Sure. Right guard, is interesting. I'm considering saying Kingsley Suamataia or Wanye Morris. I would like to see Wanye Morris play a little bit of guard to see if he can be your super offensive lineman, almost like Willie Bloomquist in baseball. Let's see if he can do that for your offensive line. Like, there's so many moving parts next year with contracts and Trey Smith and that stuff. I would love to see if Wanye could actually do that. That could be a benefactor there. Although I do think you like what you have in Caliendo. And then right tackle, I might even see if Kingsley Suamataia can play there. I'm probably leaving Wanye at right tackle, so right guard's kind of the spot that's up in the air for me. Maybe it's Kingsley that you play at right guard just to try and get some sort of confidence, right? You're no longer on an island when you're playing guard versus tackle, but right guard's the one spot that I have a little bit of, I don't know who's going to be there. Is it CJ Hansen?
Hansen's kind of the guy that like makes the most sense, but I think if they wanted to get a little bit of tape of something different, I'm with you on that being kind of interesting. Wouldn't hurt my feelings for Wanye to play right tackle. Wouldn't bother me if Wanye didn't play in this game, just considering that he has been one of those guys with a nagging injury. And like, I'm curious about Ethan Driscoll. I don't know if Carson Wentz is curious about Ethan Driscoll, but I am. So
yeah, look, Phantom in the chat goes, can you imagine what Carson Wentz is thinking with backups on the O-line?
Yeah, but he's been practicing with those guys in front of him most of this year too. So that's one of the hazards of the job for Carson Wentz.
Yeah. Okay, so are we pretty much in agreement?
Yeah, close enough.
Close enough on that.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
So quarterback Carson Wentz, we might see Oladokin in the second half, fourth quarter. I'm actually okay with giving Carson Wentz a lot of snaps here. He hasn't played hardly at all. It's not the Chiefs have been Steal, yes. Yep. Yeah. But it's not that the Chiefs have been blowing a lot of teams out, right? So with the lack of blowouts, you haven't seen Carson Wentz get a ton of action. I'm talking Carson Wentz right now.
You are still on Wentz? Okay.
Yes,
you said you haven't seen Carson Wentz play much this year. I was like, yes, that makes sense. You're in the backfield. Like, are you talking about Carson Steele?
Carson Wentz first. And the reason why with Carson Wentz is...
I said he's not Patrick Mahomes. I thought that was easy.
Well, no. But we saw when Chad Henne had to come into the game, right?
Sure.
Just give him enough reps to make him feel comfortable. However many reps that is. If it's a full game, it's a full game. If it's a half, it's a half, three quarters. But I want Carson to be ready just in case, right? The break in case of emergency if he needs a drive. We've seen Patrick's ankles go through some crazy stuff before. He has already one ankle injury so far. A lot of time to rest up. Should be good to go, obviously. But I still would like to see Carson get those reps. Both Carsons.
I was ready for the backfield. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this was a conversation Carson Wentz had with Andy Reid 6 months ago, or longer than that now, about like, if we have an opportunity, he wants to go out there and show that he should be a starter somewhere. Andy Reid has co-signed that. I think it's Carson Wentz until absolute boredom, or if he's getting if he's been sacked 6 times, maybe they throw Oladokin out there. But I think this is a Carson Wentz game.
Again, because Hendon Hooker has been playing more than Carson Wentz this year because of the fourth quarter blowouts that the Lions have been going through. And they're not like the Ravens who make sure Lamar gets his stats. All right. Running back Carson Steele and
Keontae Ingram off the practice squad, baby. Get elevated. I don't need to see any of those other 3 guys. Not for a second.
Yeah.
I bet P. Ryan's probably the guy who's active, and they might want to have him to be able to patch a special teams hole. But Isaiah Pacheco's dealing with ribs. Kareem Hunt's dealing with everything that we've seen him carry. 25 carries for Carson Steele is fine with me.
Yeah. Ronson Trait says we've needed our backup quarterback in the playoffs before. Agreed. That's why I want to see Carson get a lot of reps. He says, I don't want Wentz playing behind all those rookies. We saw what Denver did to Kingsley. The other rookies are worse. I understand where you're coming from, but this is going to have to happen. I don't want the starters in there.
No.
If it gets so bad, as Briscoe's alluding to, if it gets that bad, then I think you do put Chris Oladokin in. But I think the Chiefs want to know what they have in an actual game, because Denver is going to have to play and claw and fight for their playoff lives. So you want to see if any of the backup offensive linemen can hold up, how they perform. I know it's tough, but I probably trust Carson more than Chris, because Carson Wentz has at least done this before. He should be able to understand where to set and how to move the offensive line to pick up blitz protections, all that stuff. So,
and these guys also, it's week 18. They should be ready for a full speed challenge. This is a real evaluation opportunity. Like I saw somebody ask, can they just forfeit the game? Because I thought about that. Just getting everybody the time off would be good. This is a big game for the Chiefs front office. For these young O linemen, this game means something. And it certainly means something to Carson Wentz.
So let's go to wide receivers now. Wide receivers, no Xavier Worthy. Don't need to see any more Xavier. Juju, I think he is what he is. So I don't care either way. You're going to have to play some wide receivers, obviously. DeAndre Hopkins, I'm okay not playing. I know he has some incentives in his contract that he might want to try and hit.
Unlikely ones at this point, though.
Yeah, but I think one's only one more touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. So that's true. So maybe you'll see him on a, they get to the red zone and say, hey, D-Hop, go out there and try and catch a touchdown. I'm okay with that. Hollywood Brown's one of the bigger names that I'm a little bit intrigued by. If you want to play Hollywood Brown, I would be okay with it, getting him into more game shape, game speed. But the reason why I'm almost pulling back on that, originally I said I want to see Hollywood week 18. I want to see it, get him back in there. His target share, his routes that he's been running have been so good. Those concerns are gone away by now.
Yep.
I trust Hollywood in the 20 and 25 snaps he's played, unless you want him to literally go out there and just run wind sprints to see what it's like in game action. I trust Hollywood Brown already.
I don't need it. He's shown me plenty. He has nothing left to prove to me at this point. He's taken 45 offensive snaps, and he's gotten a very large target share on those, as you alluded to. 45 snaps and 15 targets on those. That's a good ratio. If Mahomes had to play in this game, obviously, if the Chiefs needed this game, different story. But him getting out there and running around for Carson Wentz is doing nothing for me. The real hurdle for him, it wasn't a lower leg injury, right? It was the clavicle thing. So His legs were good. He's looked like he's in football shape. I don't need him getting tackled in a game that doesn't matter.
100% agree. So I'm glad we are in agreement there. Again, I was originally thinking I wanted to see Hollywood. Now I am fine.
Give me Justin Watson, Nico Remigio. If Worthy has to be active, I get it. He's the rookie, but I don't need to see anything else from him. You do just get into a numbers game. They just cut Montreal Washington off the practice squad, so maybe Hardman could be back this week. Andy kept the window open there on him. You could bring him back and let him play all game, and then call up Justin Ross, and Tyquan Thornton's on the practice squad. It's been a few weeks there now, so. But that's the caliber of guys I want to see Carson Wentz throwing to.
And then tight end, you're going to go with Anthony Furskers no longer. It is now, I'm blanking.
Hendershot is back on the active roster.
So it's Hendershot now, because Furkser is now gone. I apologize. I have not thought about Furkser in a while.
No, he's on the practice squad now, right? I'm checking.
Okay. We know Travis. Do you even want to see Noah Gray?
I don't. He's too valuable at this point. I mean, again, one of those guys that wouldn't surprise me to see him out there. I wouldn't be mad about it necessarily, but he gets half the snaps every week anyway. I don't really need him to get snaps in a game that doesn't matter, because think about as injured as the Chiefs have been at tight end this year. They brought back Jody Fortson. He got hurt. They drafted Jared Wiley. He got hurt. And Hendershot's back now, but they are so thin behind Kelsey and Gray right now that the idea of Gray getting hurt on some freak thing in a meaningless game is way scarier to me than the idea of Anthony Furkser, practice squad. There you go. And Robert Tonyan.
Yeah,
bring them both up.
Robert Tonyan. Thank you, Joshua Clayton, in the chat. I saw that. Robert Tonyan, former Green Bay Packer tight end, had that one really good year with Rodgers. It wasn't a lot of yards, but I believe he had 9 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken, that one year. Just an absolute red zone masterclass. So that's more or less the offense that you and I are looking at. Defensively, a little different though for me, I think, than maybe most. Maybe I'm wrong here. No McDuffie. Let's start in the defensive line first, okay?
Okay.
Defensive line first. No Chris Jones.
Joshua Uche's finally gonna play.
What if he's still a healthy scratch?
I'm so worried about that, dude. I'm dead serious worried about that.
So no Chris Jones. No Karlaftis.
My group gets thin really quick. You ought to just say what you want to do.
Oh, man. Uche for sure. I think Turk Wharton, because you're going to need bodies, right?
Turk Wharton played like 92% of the snaps on Christmas. Marlon Tuipulotu, get ready to learn 80% of the snaps, my guy. This is your time to shine.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Mike Dan is going to probably play, because it's going to be a veteran breakdown, right?
Mike Dan has been hurt all year. Give this man some time. He had a great game on Christmas. Give him his time off.
But I'm trying to. You have to have enough guys, though, Brisco.
Joshua Uche, Marlon Tuipulotu,
yes.
Malik Herring, Felix Anudike Uzama. There's got to be somebody else on the practice squad. Let's look at the defensive tackles on the practice squad.
FAU is going to play 75% of
Fabian Lovett is still on the practice squad. Remember him from last year? I think it was is this year too. They have a guy named Siaki Ika on the practice squad, a defensive tackle. Call him up.
Derek Nottie.
Nottie might be the guy. Nottie might be the vet that plays because he and Pinnell have had very, very part-time roles this year. I think Pinnell's been a little better in his, but he's also older significantly. So Derek Nottie might be the guy that gets out there and gets a little, because also for him, you're not getting a huge workload. You haven't gotten to put a ton that you love on tape this year. So maybe he says, yeah, I'll go get some more reps and try to, use that for a contract for next year. But I'm dead serious, man. I want to see Tui Pelotu, FAU, Uche, and then a bunch of the guys, and Malik Herring, and a bunch of the guys off the practice squad who I've already forgotten the names of.
But FAU is maybe one of the more exciting pieces to watch. Again, we're talking about a Denver team that needs to win. So you can actually get some good game action, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I'm with you, Ronson. Trey Pinnell's really good with a little rest. I think Mike Pinnell, and I would like to sit Turk Wharton as well. I've talked about the almost correlation of Turk Wharton's snap count versus his production. Like there's a fine line of where Turk Wharton really thrives. When Charles Omenihu came back, you saw him start to thrive again because I think his workload was getting too much for him to be putting up consistent, effective snaps. I think he was getting tired on the field. So I would like to rest Turk and let him get back to the game changer almost alongside Chris Jones on the interior. But yeah, I think FAU for me is maybe the most exciting piece because I think FAU's actually had a quietly solid season in a limited role, not first round caliber, obviously sunk cost, baby, talking sunk costs, but he's been, I think again, he's been fine. Like he's not been a liability when he's in playing edge. He's been okay. We at least saw some growth this year for a guy who was one of the younger players coming into the draft. That was at least nice to see.
Yeah, and an opportunity to prove more of that in a larger sample size here. I think he's an easy one that you want to see. Give him George Karlaftis' work share in this game, and let's see how he looks.
So linebacker gets interesting because it was Jack Conkrin who went out with the injury, right? Nick Bolton, I don't think you will see at all. I don't think you will see Drew Tranquil at all. I think you might see Leo Chanel because they might want to see how he lines up as the Mike.
I agree. He might be one of the only more 50% or up guys. I also saw someone's like, you're going to rest 8 to 10 starters. I'm looking to rest 20 to 25, honestly. But Chanel might be one of those guys who's right on that line to your point of let him play the mic and get some reps with the green dot and see if that projects to next year at all for you. Let Spags communicate through him for a game. There's value in that.
Well, I think there's a lot of value for the Chiefs side of things. Again, my love of Nick Bolton, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm really very strong feelings of Bolton wanting to come back here in Kansas City. But if you were the Kansas City Chiefs and you're trying to drive that market down, if Leo Chanel's your Mike and he has a really good game and they love how he's communicating with everyone and he's out there doing a lot of the things that Nick Bolton does on the field, well, you can take that to Bolton and say, hey, we want you to be here. We know you're a Mizzou guy. Well, all these things, we know you're local. But we're not going to pay top dollar when we have a guy waiting in the wings who could do some of the similar things that you do and for a lot cheaper cost. So I think from the Chiefs' perspective here, having Leo play and play well is paramount in this game.
Yeah, it gives you somebody to watch who is going to have to eat up some of those snaps, who has not been, he has clearly been this team's third linebacker this year, and oftentimes he's getting less than a usual linebacker 3 kind of role. And then the rest of the guys in the secondary for me is where I'm going to make up for most of the rest of the bodies that have to be out there, I think.
Yeah. Cam Jones, obviously, is another guy that I think is very fun to watch because he was really good. Was that week 18 last year when Cam Jones was flying over the field
right?
and was outstanding? But I would really like to see Cam Jones play again in this one and see how he does. Again, just that linebacker depth. How does he is he a linebacker depth piece for the future? Right. We'll see how that goes. Secondary time. No Trent McDuffie, correct?
Yeah. No McDuffie, no Justin Reed, no Brian Cook. Those 3 are pretty easy for me.
I have questions on Brian Cook. I don't think I'd play Brian Cook, but he's not been great. And I wonder if that's where rest would help him.
Right. So I know you're going to expand on this, but for every player who you're like, they haven't really seemed like themselves the last few weeks, if your follow-up thought to that is they should play an extra football game, I just think we're looking at it wrong. It's like, yeah, Mike Dana and Brian Cook and some of these other guys who have been dealing with things throughout the entire season by and large, given the choice, let those guys rest for 2 consecutive weeks and see how their ankle suddenly feels. I bet it'll be better.
Yeah. So you've noticed Jaden Hicks has been getting an uptick in snap count. Part of that comes with Shamari Connor, obviously going down with concussion, but it also comes with the simple fact that Brian Cook has been getting taken off the field more for Jaden Hicks. Jaden Hicks has been the better player in recent weeks. So I wonder how that's going to transpire. I think you'll see a lot of Jaden Hicks in this one. Cornerback wise, I'm all for playing Najee, Joshua Williams. I know that's basically your Keith Taylor, Christian Roland Wallace. I'm basically just saying you play all the normal corners outside of Trent McDuffie.
I'd be curious if they feel like Williams needs it just because he's the most known quantity out of that group. And his play this year hasn't really fluctuated. He's just kind of been inconsistent. But yeah, I think Najee Johnson and probably Keith Taylor and Chris Roland Wallace for your outsides and your slot guy. I would let them have that like the whole game, unless they want to play Connor, who obviously he will be coming back from a multi-week absence with the concussion. So maybe they want to get him some more reps in there somewhere. But yeah, I definitely don't need to see McDuffie. I might not need to see Josh Williams. I just think they're severely worse off if he gets hurt in this game, and the rest of the guys could use the reps.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, for the Nick Bolton contract, I think this is pretty interesting from Ronson Trey. You've been great in the chat today. The way Patrick Queen has played this year has already negatively impacted the linebacker market. Bolton will get less than Queen. That's a good call. I thought they were semi-comparable players contract-wise, but very different stylistically-wise players, right? But the way Patrick Queen has played, that is killing, I think, the free agent linebacker market. I mean, linebackers have already had their value driven down in recent years, with Patrick Queen being one of the bigger linebackers to hit the market and then vastly underperforming. That's a good call right there of what Nick Bolton's contract is even going to look like. Steven Nelson. Yeah, good call. Brian Gales.
He's maybe the guy. I'm afraid what they're going to have to do with their practice squad numbers, but he's the guy I most want to see in this game.
It's so late in the season, and I think the Chiefs have finally found a solid method in the secondary, right? It took 16 weeks, 15, probably, what was that Browns game? 15 weeks.
Yeah.
But I think they finally found what to do. They kept trying to say, we're going to play one cornerback who's not named Trent McDuffie like 90% of the snaps. It's either going to be Williams or it's going to, when Watson went down, by the way.
Right.
They're going to play Najee Johnson, Williams, doesn't matter. We're going to try and play that guy 90%. Well, about week 15-ish, I feel like we saw a switch where it's like, no, we're actually going to play these guys 50% and 25%, and he's going to play 10 snaps, almost matchup-wise, in the game. And all of a sudden, the secondary has looked vastly improved. It also culminates with the pass rush finally getting some pressure on the quarterback. That's going to help a little bit as well. But I do think Spags and the secondary, maybe it's Dave Merritt, have found a nice cohesion when it comes to how to use these players. Because maybe Keith Taylor gets exposed if he plays 40 snaps. But when we saw him against the Texans playing 10, he had a great rep against Dalton Schultz in the end zone. He was blanketing him, right? Made it so he couldn't go that way on play action. We're seeing Christian Roland Wallace start to make more plays now that he's playing entirely in the slot. Honestly, I hate injuries, and it's horrible for Shamari Connor, but it was nice to see Christian Roland Wallace get some actual game snaps later on in the season, right? He was doing that, got benched, came back, and looked better. So I don't know how they're going to go, especially in this final game, but with Steven Nelson, I don't know where he fits in now long-term, at least long-term, long-term playoff-wise, but short-term, even in week 18.
My two, I generally agree with all that. My two just like little nagging concerns is I wonder how much of that was forced on them when Shamari Connor got hurt, because that did coincide with kind of this new strategy, I suppose, of switching these guys in and out. I do think that playing those matchups has been beneficial. I also think having Chris Roland Wallace as a sometimes food does let you move Trent McDuffie into the slot if you want to have him back in there against certain wide receivers. the three offenses they just played all is the secondary thing. Obviously, Jameis is a turnover machine, but they capitalized. That counts. Houston, totally different football team after the Tank Dell injury, but they held up. That counts. And then Pittsburgh is just such a unique offense in terms of how much of their offense is basically Russell Wilson moonballs that do get brought down by Pickens and Williams in plenty of instances over the course of this season. That makes me wonder if they could still be. It makes me worry, at least, that they could still be exposed by an offense that wants to attack them more in the short to intermediate, that does want to test them when they are in zone. They were in zone plenty in the previous weeks. I don't mean they were like just, manned up on Pickens all day or whatever. But I have enough of those wrinkles from these last few weeks that I'm wondering if it's going to continue to look like this the next time that we see them. I think it might, but I'm just curious about that.
You can't stop Debbie Downer. No, it's okay. I get exactly what you're saying. Although I did think Pittsburgh was the game where I felt pretty confident about because of the deep balls, the moon balls, whatever you want to call it. I think that was the game I needed to see the Chiefs secondary look stout and look good in, and they exceeded all of my expectations. Joshua Clayton says, do you guys think Watson will be ready for the playoffs? Justin, yes. Jalen, no.
Yes, correct. Yeah. No, Andy Reid was asked about it directly yesterday, and he said that there was like a very outside shot that he could be back at some point. I think that means we might hear around the Super Bowl, if they're playing in it, that we might hear that he's like working his way back to practice. But then you are asking a guy, you talk about rust, you are asking a guy at that point who's missed 10 to 14 weeks or whatever with an ankle injury, working back from that. So I would be pretty hard pressed to see him playing meaningful games again this year.
Sean says, do you buy the narrative that the Chiefs don't want the Bengals in the playoffs?
Do you want this one first? Or do you want me to take it first?
I'll tell you, because I did it on Sunday Sound Off, and I've talked about it.
Can I go first?
Thanks for asking. Yeah.
No. Sterling, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I had this whole thing on Sunday Sound Off, and I've talked this a while now. I tweeted it out as well. I don't understand why this is a narrative at all. You're telling me it's all national media driven. It's because they need something, right? They need something. The only current quarterback in the NFL to beat Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game is Joe Burrow. It has happened to coincide 3 years ago with Patrick playing the worst game we have ever seen him play in the second half of football. We've never seen him play that bad. That second half of football, I have never seen Patrick look that bad. We've seen some bad games from Patrick even this year. And I still am sitting here going, that second half was brutal. And it still took overtime to beat Kansas City. Right? So, short answer, no. A little bit longer answer, that would be great. If the Chiefs face Cincinnati, that means they took down Buffalo or the Ravens, right? So, yes, please. I would love if Kansas City played the 9-8 Bengals, whose defense is 2. No, check that. 3 scoops of ass. They're not well coached. Andy Reid could say they're a well coached team. I don't think Zach Taylor's a good coach. So, no, I would love if the Chiefs played the Bengals. They would be the worst team in the AFC playoffs. That would be ideal. Because if you face the Chargers, you're facing them 3 times in 1 year. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. They're not as good as the Ravens. They're not as good as the Bills. That means the Broncos would be the team out of the playoffs. So again, that's another team you would have to face 3 times in 1 year. The Texans are probably worse because of the offensive line issues, right?
If you want to sneak the Dolphins in, I know it would be the Bengals spot, but I'd also be okay if Miami came back through. That's all right.
I would love if the Dolphins came in.
But they're not going to make it to Arrowhead. There's no shot. I think, to your point, the reason that the Bengals are a fun playoff team, and I think a national media perspective, they're by far the most fun team to talk about out of those last 3 contenders. By a mile. Burrow has been playing really good football this season. Those 2 receivers are stupendous. Their defense, maybe 4 ass scoops, depending on what kind of scoop you're using. And I think the Bengals are more dangerous, so to speak, than the Broncos or the Dolphins. If you said Bengals, Broncos, Dolphins, one of them is in the AFC Championship game. I wouldn't hesitate to say, well, I'd pick the Bengals out of those three. I don't think any of those three teams are going to sniff it. I don't think any of those three teams are going to end up in the divisional round of the playoffs. But if you said one of those teams gets all the way to the conference, I would say it would be Cincy out of that group. But if you told me, hey, the Chiefs are going to host a team at Arrowhead. I guess it wouldn't work this way in consecutive in all in the one round. We said, who would you rather the Chiefs face at Arrowhead in the playoffs? The 2024 Buffalo Bills or the 2024 Cincinnati Bengals? I would take the Bengals 10 times out of 10 because their defense stinks. That game totally could be 40-32, and maybe that's what it takes. I think the Chiefs defense is a little better than that, but I don't think anybody. I don't think Chiefs fans, I don't think Chiefs players, certainly not players and coaches, they're not afraid of Cincinnati. I kind of, honestly, I kind of would like to see them get in. It would also be funny for the Chiefs to leave that door open by Carson Wentz beating the Broncos. But I'd also much rather watch Bills Bengals in the first round of the playoffs than Broncos Bills.
Yeah, 100%. Just the general football watching would be better. Yes. They are more dangerous than Miami and I think Denver too. Although Denver's done a nice job, obviously, with Sean Payton and Bo Nix. Very impressed with that and kind of the AFC West and as a whole. As I've gotten older, I think I've understood the value of coaching in the NFL, and I think the value more than almost any other sport. Baseball, I think, has a strong argument as well. Hockey, I'm not well-versed enough that I want to make that argument. But even like in basketball, the NBA specifically, I don't think NBA head coaches do a ton. You're more ego managing than anything else in the NBA. Baseball, it's more bullpen management, right? But even that is a lot of times, well, hey, I called on this guy. I think the pitcher needs to do their job. I think it's more on the pitcher a lot of times than actually the bullpen management. That's my 2 cents when it comes to baseball. NFL, though, I think you're really seeing the impact of the head coach. You're seeing Kevin O'Connell do what he's doing in Minnesota. You're seeing Sean Payton do what he's doing when he has, again, a quarterback that he likes. Whether or not we believed what he said, whether or not he even believed what he said when he was originally drafted, he at least got a guy that he thought he could do something with, and he's doing something with. You're looking at the job that Harbaugh's done in LA with the Chargers. I mean, seriously, we thought they were taking a pretty big step back this year, right? I think we all did. But he's done a great job. Like, he's using Herbert the correct way. They have J.K. Dobbins, and J.K. Dobbins is having a great year, but it's not Saquon Barkley, right? Like, I've been very impressed with the Chargers. And again, it kind of goes to Antonio Pierce. Maybe he wasn't the right guy. Maybe Rich Bisaccia was, but this time around, it wasn't the right move. I think you're really seeing the value of the head coach in the NFL more so than ever.
It's also almost impossible to see that and identify that in a single season. I think that's why the interim to head coach thing is always kind of dangerous. Getting the vibes right for 6 weeks is still pretty hard, I imagine, but it's a very different thing than, again, to pick coaches, like two coaches on kind of different ends of the still successful spectrum. Andy Reid has had that sort of standard for more than a decade here and about a decade in Philly and towards the end in Philadelphia. You got to see those cracks a little bit, and then they make a move and he comes and he rebuilds everything here. On the other hand, Kevin O'Connell has pointed that team in the right direction, but then got his rookie quarterback to build the next era around, loses him before the season even starts, and then builds Sam Darnold up to be able to execute within that offense. Hugely, hugely impressive. Dan Campbell is he's a culture guy who has totally redeemed the culture of the Detroit Lions. Meanwhile, you have a guy like Kevin Stefanski who just like wins a Coach of the Year award every 2 or 3 seasons just because, I guess. And he can't overcome, the worst contract period in NFL history. I don't hold that against Stefanski. I'd like for him to get a chance in a competent organization, but you have to be able to do that for multiple seasons, I think, to really prove that you are in one of those elite classes of head coach. And Dan Campbell is going to have to do it without Ben Johnson next year, I assume. I assumed that last year too, I guess. But D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud, again, last year with a huge, huge turnaround and a total success story. But this year, it's not taking us a jump in the second season that you'd like to see, or even stabilizing that you'd like to see from an organization you're really content with the power structure of. And I think they'll be fine. But that's like the Patriots are reconciling a similar thing right now. Getting that right you can only be proven right over many, many years, but you can be proven wrong in about 6 weeks. And I think that's kind of an interesting extra little add-on to everything that you said that I think is already very true.
Yeah, and it's why I think sometimes even 1 year isn't enough to fully judge. I think Mike McDaniels now, I think we're all seen as overrated, and I would say vastly overrated. I think maybe he's better as an OC. Sometimes guys are better as, like, Spagnuolo is phenomenal as a DC. Wasn't great as a head coach, phenomenal as a DC, right? Like, some guys
coaches also aren't linear that way, though. Bill Belichick was a really bad head coach until he was the greatest of all time.
Sure, and it happens. Situation, all that stuff matters. Ownership, organization, that all matters. But again,
I think Rex Ryan is the guy that needs a third shot. I think if the Jets bring him back again, I think that could really do it.
You know, and maybe Mark Sanchez.
I made that joke yesterday. I was like, yeah, you should come with Mark Sanchez with him. But like Ron Rivera is getting another head coaching interview. He's a guy that's had like good culture, but not success. Like there's so many levels to it that I think it makes it fascinating.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this Week 18 game? Obviously, we have so much to talk about in regards to the playoff structure, playoff layout. I don't really want to get into it all today because we have so much time with the bye especially. Let's not try and shoot everything on hypotheticals before we really know in just a week. Heads up, everyone. No show tomorrow. Best of myself. We will have off. It is New Year's Day. Nice. Hopefully everyone has a great New Year's. Really happy for everyone. Be responsible. I know I'm the fun guy. I know I'm the guy that loves to have a couple adult beverages, smoke some cigars, all that stuff. But if you do drink, please don't drive. That's just so silly. It's not worth it. You know, pay the $20 for an Uber, even if it's $50 for an Uber because of the surges or whatever. You'll thank yourself. Pay the $50 instead of the $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 that a DUI could cost. It's just not worth it. So if you do go out tonight, please drink responsibly and get an Uber. All right, though. Sorry for being Debbie Downer, but that just I get like anxiety about New Year's Eve. Like I get it because of that. So
a good little PSA from Sterling G. Holmes.
Yeah, public Sterling announcement. All right, final thoughts on Week 18. What do you got?
Listen, the Chiefs aren't going to be stressing about if they're getting too rested. You shouldn't either. Let the guys who can rest. Enjoy evaluating Carson Wentz in a backup offensive line. Enjoy evaluating a huge workload for Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Take this on as like one of the bowl games that you don't get bad vibes from. You know this game is not meaningful. It's part preseason, part bowl game. Your team has accounted for everything they could possibly accomplish in this regular season, short of an undefeated year, which in some ways I'm kind of glad we're not having to talk about right now because that would change the whole tenor of all of this. They've accomplished everything they could to this point. Let these professional football players and professional football coaches who have gone and won to 2 consecutive Super Bowls in the last 2 seasons, let them catch their breath, enjoy the rest of the NFL action. I'm genuinely kind of excited to come in here next Tuesday and to talk about whichever young tackle looked the best, and then we can look ahead to the playoffs. Don't worry about rust. Just enjoy the rest.
Love that. Any New Year's resolution? I know what mine is.
I don't think I do. What are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm going to work out less. I'm going to eat more.
Good.
I'm going to pick up a bad habit.
I get most of my bad habits out of the way Tuesday afternoon, and that was sort of one of the big negative changes in my life. I'm not really a resolutions guy. I don't really think I ever have been. Sometimes I'll have like goals or like reasons to, start doing push-ups again or whatever. But I have a punching bag in my basement I was planning on using again very soon. But if that's January 7th, or if that would have been December 29th, that would have also been fine. So yeah, I think my New Year's resolution is to to keep doing at least another 2 months of Tuesdays with Stu. Try to have some Super Bowl football to evaluate, but I don't have much say in that either. So
yeah, if it takes you a random day to really get into the spirit of keeping a healthy habit alive, you probably weren't too into it to begin with.
Yeah.
And plus, all you're doing is killing me when I go to yoga, because everyone always goes to yoga after the new year like it's a resolution. And I'm like, bleep you guys, there's no room for me to do downward dog. Now I have someone just in my space, but get off my mat. I liked it better when there's 40 people in this room. I don't need 75, okay? I don't like it. Get away from me.
What's down dog?
I'll show you down dog.
Whoa!
Dog. I'll show you down dog. Big yoga guy. Helps the back out. Helps the golf.
You know what? I'm gonna. Where do you? Will you text me where you go and where you do yoga? I think January 1st. I think I'm gonna be there.
Yeah. You know what? I will.
I'm gonna be right in your spot, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
It's good for you.
And then you will not see me again. But I will bother you the first week of January.
I'm just probably not gonna go for a week. I'm just gonna wait. Just gonna wait it out.
Joshua Clayton in the chat says hot yoga. Yeah, but what kind of yoga do you do, Sterling?
Yeah, it's hot yoga. A lot of times with weights. Hot yoga with weights. Oh, baby, it's a good workout.
Anytime Sterling does yoga, it's hot yoga. That's what I was going for. I was trying to set you up, gas you up for the new year.
By the way, final thoughts. I think the Chiefs cover, and I think the Chiefs have a very good chance of winning. I think Carson Wentz at the helm. You'll see a fun Carson. I think he is playing for a job somewhere. Maybe not as a starter, but again, just being that long-term backup somewhere else, even if it's not in Kansas City. So I think Carson actually has a lot to play for. I think you'll see the best of him. A lot of guys trying to fight for jobs. I know we keep talking about a lot of stars and all the starters sitting, but all these guys are trying to keep and maintain jobs as well. So the Chiefs aren't just going to roll over that 9.5 point spread. I am taking the Chiefs hardcore. I teased that down to 7.5, baby. Give me that plus money. We're going to have some fun. We'll talk to you guys later on. I believe Patrick is going to be on Thursday. Then we'll obviously have our Sunday show as well. I'll be back on the post-game show. So everyone have a safe, happy new year. Talk to you next year. I hate that joke, even as it left my mouth. Brisco, always fun. Talk to you guys later.